Nah, I don't wanna do it, but I ain't afraid to die. Lord knows I ain't perfect, I ain't trying to tell a lie. It's understood and I ain't hearing all that woulda, coulda, shoulda. Trying to say you want peace, then you burn the.
It was my God's honest that I was all about a non-violent approach, but it seems truth is a non-topic.
Did you, like, when you whether it was Minnesota or Colorado, were both of those facilities kind of federal facilities where you were locked up with guys with similar convictions, or was it a plethora of different types of offenders?
Well, at the high security facility, you're with anybody and everybody. There was a U.S. Marshal in there. There was the big the shot caller for the Aryan Brotherhood.
The guy who's on YouTube?
No, this guy was number 3 at the time, and then the number 2 guy was there too.
Oh.
I wonder if it's one of the guys. There's a couple of really big guys in the Aryan Brotherhood that have like podcasts and shit now.
Yeah.
And tell their
I
stories.
don't know. All I know is when this guy was transferred there, they shut down the whole prison. Everyone had to go back.
Wow.
Odds in their cells, because he was that dangerous, or that they considered him, a security risk. So everyone
gotta be the guy I'm thinking of.
Probably.
I'll have to show him to you later, and you could tell me if it's the same dude.
But at a facility like this, there's gangsters, murderers, big time fraud guys, banksters. Like one of my cellies was the vice president of General Electric.
Really?
What? Embezzling,
Yep.
probably,
Shit.
or something
Bob Watson.
like that.
His name was Bob Watson.
Bob Watson sounds like
He
a name.
his boss was Jack Welch.
Huh.
Wow, no kidding.
Shit.
That's an interesting story there too. There's a story there too, but I won't talk about it.
Yeah, we'll have to save that one.
And then because like you were telling me about some pretty interesting people, like the one guy you said it would be cool to tell his story. Was that in Colorado? Like at the camp thing?
Now at camp, there was very interesting people there too, but nobody that I would consider like really dangerous. You know what I mean? Like millionaires, a lot of rich guys, a lot of, interesting people, but like some of the people there probably didn't even belong in prison in the first place. You know what I mean? But some of them just ran afoul of banking laws or some obscure procedure that they didn't know was legal. You know what I'm saying? Stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I met some really cool dudes at camp too. A guy named Adam Resnick, he wrote a book on. You can actually pull up his footage on NBC. He was in Vegas and he lost $8 million on the blackjack table.
Oh, you told me about this guy.
And the dude is hilarious. He's a genius also. Like he's in Mensa and all that stuff. And me and him were good buddies at camp. And we were cellies too. Another guy was Michael Gallardi. He was the strip club kingpin of Las Vegas. Like he owned all the major strip clubs, like Cheetahs, and he was a trip too. He was also my cellie. And then there's just a lot of interesting people at those places. Like you.
Oh hell yeah!
Who is the guy you mentioned recently when we were talking? I think he was some kind of drug trafficker from Cuba or something like that.
Cuba, yeah. His nickname was Cuba. His real name was Jorge, and he was from Cuba. He was one of the original Mariolitos, as they say. Because
basically, people who don't know, like that would be like Tony Montana.
Yeah.
Like the original. Yeah. Okay. The original Exile guys.
He was the prototype for Tony Montana. He was living in Miami. He was sprung from Castro's prisons and shipped over,
Wow. So that's for
part of
real.
the Cuban crime wave, because Castro emptied his prisons to as like a politically motivated attack against Jimmy Carter at the time. And
Yeah.
but for him, it was like coming to the promised land.
Right.
It was
Yeah.
all machine guns and kilos for him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He was down there blasting machine guns and selling kilos, and that was that was his thing. And then
Oh yeah. Shit.
at
I
some
know.
point, he must have joined the Vice Lords, because he ended up being like I want to say like a 3-star general. I think that's how they.
Really?
Oh damn.
Yeah, but when I met him, he retired from gang activity, and apparently you can do that because when a current 3-star guy hit the art, they met each other, and it was all good. They were friends, and they respected him and treated him like an OG and all that, So, but he had an amazing story, and he wrote like 3 or 4 books in prison, and one of them was published, and it was like it became like a uh, prison classic of sorts. Like a lot of prisoners would read this book, because it was such a good book. You know what I mean? And and he was a talented portrait artist. Like that was his side hustle. Like he would do portraits of other inmates or their wives or their kids
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
or whatever. And he made a lot of money doing that. Cool guy, super cool. And he was my cellie for about 2 months when I was at the high security joint in Minnesota.
Did you ever have any of these guys try to get you involved in like whether it was an escape or
Or a
like some kind
scam
of
of some
hustle
kind?
or a scam or anything in prison?
Um, well, nothing serious like that. There was like some minor smuggling, just like holding a guy's stamps for him,
Right. Yeah.
stuff like that, or
This is
getting
crazy.
something from the hospital into general population, little things for favors and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
nothing like major, like escapes or anything like that. I would not have been interested in anything.
Right.
Um, Now there was one guy who was a bank robber. Um, he was trying to get me to get his cash and do something with it. When I got out, he was gonna like cut me in on it if I like invested it or something. I don't remember all the details right now, but he was a real bank robber, and he claimed that he was the gentleman bandit, and I found out later that he wasn't, but his paperwork looked like he was because he'd he'd robbed over 30 banks. I mean, this
Wow.
Damn.
no joke. I mean, he was like the real deal, like 30 banks. And I'm reading it, I'm like, holy shit, I might be who he says he is, but I found out much later on it wasn't him, but he was like a top tier bank robber.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty damn successful. Now
But
since that guy Johnny Mitchell is making the rounds online and making a career out of this, I gotta ask I mean, I already know the answers to a lot of this, but this guy talks about, immediately when you enter a facility like that, you got to fight the biggest guy you see, man, for your
You know, it's
respect,
straight up movie
or you're
cut
just going to be,
bullshit.
everybody's bitch the whole time you're there. The first place you go to is a maximum security place, which is, what he's describing. Did you ever feel
Like you had to do that.
anything like that, or did you feel like you had to become a skinhead?
Yeah, like you're pressured into being in a gang.
no, not at all. And like most things, I did a lot of research before I went to prison because I was scared and I wanted
Yeah, for sure.
to do and what not to do. And that whole starting a fight the first day in, that's a myth. I mean, that's bullshit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, anyone I've ever talked
There
to
may be
that said that
some
bullshit.
situations in state prisons
Right.
or a detention facility where something like that could happen, but not in the feds. Not in the feds. That's not even a thing.
Mhm.
And it's not a thing in all prisons. It's just it could happen to you in a state prison that has a lot of gangs.
Right.
You're going to have to choose a side, and in some cases that might actually help you. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
generally speaking, that's the dumbest thing to do, and it's only going to get you in more trouble. It's going to
Yeah.
increase your security, um, your custody level, and you're going to get written up right off the bat. You know,
Yeah, who the fuck wants
it's
that?
all it's just dumb. You know what I mean? So
I mean, granted, you were in federal facilities, so I mean, I'm sure things operate a little differently. But I mean, people say that the feds, it's a lot better place to be than to be,
In the States.
yeah, than to be in the states, or you know, the what do you call it, the independently,
All the private
yeah,
prisons.
the private
Yeah.
prisons and stuff like that. So you get a little better treatment in the feds, I take it.
it's different. I mean, it still sucks, but it's
Right.
better in certain ways. Like I would say it's cleaner. It's generally speaking cleaner. It's depending upon there's certain pressures that don't exist, like having to join gangs.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone is in there so separate from everyone else that it's like if there is a gang activity, they just deal with other gangsters. They don't care about anybody else. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're trying to recruit you to their gang. You know what I mean? It's just
Yeah.
it doesn't happen like that in the feds. There's no pressure to the only person you should whose back you should have is your celly. That's it.
Right.
Celly, protect your space. That's all you have to worry about. You don't have to go looking for trouble or
Mm-hmm.
fights. That's stupid. Mind your business. That's what you do. You mind your business.
Now, did you see anybody getting stuck when you were locked up? You know, getting stabbed, getting any of that crazy shit happen in the feds?
I've seen a couple fights. I haven't seen any stabbings. A couple fights. I saw one guy at Mainline get smacked in the face with a lunch tray. I mean, that was the guy got smacked in the face with a lunch tray. I mean, it like blew his hair back and everything.
Ooh.
But aside from that, just some fights that got broke up pretty quickly too, because if the cops see, they usually hit the deuces or whatever, like they say, and they lock down the yard and everyone gets on the ground and all that. So there's not a lot of people. A lot of the stuff that happened somewhere else. You don't see it. You know what I mean? Like you hear about the next day, or you hear about it at lunch or something like that. But I didn't really see too much. One interesting thing at Rochester in Minnesota, because it was a medical facility. There's like 3 medical facilities in the federal system. There's one in Butner, I think that's North Carolina. There's one in Rochester. I think there's one in Kentucky. There was one in Texas. I don't know if that one still exists anymore. But anyway, you have all security classifications at those, and so there's all kind of different people there, and a lot of people have disabilities and wheelchairs and electric scooters and stuff like that. And you wouldn't believe how many handicapped people are actually in prison. Like, I was I'm handicapped too, so it was like I had an electric scooter in Rochester.
No shit.
Oh, no shit.
I couldn't walk that far because it was too far to walk, because my mobility has decreased over time. So back in 2007, I had a scooter to get around. Well, apparently, drive-by shankings were a thing at this prison. Like
Like
guys,
roll by Shankings. That's crazy.
drive-by shankings. Guys would get
You're
like
rolling by a guy and just
exactly. But
Oh,
first they would scrape the toilet bowl with the shank. Then they drive by and stick you, and then they zoom away. So they had drive-by shankings at that prison.
wow.
no shit. That's
That's
crazy.
nuts.
It was so like yeah, for people that don't know, your thing is you have MD, right?
Yeah, I had a mild form of muscular dystrophy. There's like
Okay.
different types. The one I have is called FSH. So like I can still drive, and I don't need any adaptive equipment. I can do pretty much everything. It's just that I can't walk far. My balance isn't that good, and it's gotten worse since 2007, obviously, but um, it's it hasn't really stopped me from doing day-to-day activities, and I can still
Right. You're not trying to play in the NHL or nothing like that. So it's
no, that was never an option. That was never an option.
I mean, so like it was the second place that you went, was that also a medical based facility or no?
No,
Okay,
it was
between
just
the two, like so it isn't just in the medical ones, but basically in federal prisons, you're not getting that whole like big gang thing and all of that, probably because of the guys that are getting put in there are from all different reaches of society.
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
right, and they don't put a lot of gangsters together. There might be a lot of gang members on a yard, but they're all from different gangs. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay.
So there's not a lot of opportunity for more than like 3 or 4 guys to click up. So it's like, what are you going to do with that? So
Right.
Yeah.
It sounds
but
like, you got a lot of guys who are just trying to get through their time
Well,
because
yeah.
they're essentially regular guys like we
Wanna
talked
get
about in
back
the
to
other
their
one.
life.
Yeah, they were just like greedy at the
Mhm.
time. They have no plans. Well, one thing is, were you ever locked up with any like Cosa Nostra or because I know a lot of those guys are in the white collar crime now, the organized crime guys, whether it be Cosa Nostra or Russian. Did you ever encounter any of those guys?
I only encountered 2 mob guys, one at Rochester and then one in Colorado at the camp. The one in Rochester, somebody pointed him out to me. I never talked to him or anything. Um, so I didn't know him or anything. But the guy in at camp, um, I met him, and he eventually got plugged into our pod. So he was technically a cellie for a little while, but that was not a good situation because he, I mean, we found out later, but we kind of suspected while he was in there. He got transferred there to try to get one of
Oh,
my cellies caught up in something.
damn.
Huh.
Yeah, he kept fishing for information about him,
Ooh.
and it went from like being slick about it to being like overt about it, and then like threatening about it. You know what I mean?
Damn.
Almost like a total entrapment thing. Like I got this thing going on, and
That's fucked.
that's like it's
Yeah,
almost like the Mr. Big thing that the
Right.
Canadian police do a lot of, except
Yeah.
this is with an actual mob guy. Wow, that's crazy. But your guys were smart enough to kind of see through it though.
yeah. The guy who he was trying to set up knew something was up, and he was like tried to avoid him at all costs. You know what I mean? Stay out
Yeah.
of the room. Be somewhere else as often as possible. And it made the whole thing really uncomfortable because it was a
That
lot
would be awkward as fuck.
of tension in our room. So one person could throw off the whole vibe, like,
Sure.
man,
No,
it's
yeah.
cool. Everything was cool before he got there. And he was first because, this mob guy, and, he had all these good mob stories to tell. Like, whoa, that's cool. But then
Mhm.
once that stopped and he started like working his plan to set this guy up, then it just got weird, and then it got uncomfortable, then it got stressful, and then it was just tension, like, God, I hope this ends soon. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Yeah. What's crazy is it's almost like kids that are watching this, I shouldn't say kids, but young adults who watch this, who are criminals or aspiring criminals,
which we don't recommend.
Hell no. But God, if you're gonna do something, do federal.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you have a better chance of coming home alive, not in the box. You know, you're not being forced to cover yourself in swastikas and proclaim your fucking yourself as supreme.
Right. You don't have to join a gang to survive.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, and the thing is like, I feel like most guys in there are kind of like, okay, I know the deal. I know what's going down, because the second you get indicted federally, isn't there just they have a crazy percentage rate of conviction?
Right.
97.
Like,
yeah, they're not going to
97.
try to go after some Fed face unless they've got.
Yeah, once you get indicted,
yeah,
you're
gonna do some time.
You're gonna lose your case. You're gonna go to prison or something.
Right.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of like I don't really know what constitutes like a federal crime in some instances, meaning I know that some murders are considered a federal crime, capital crime, whatever.
Yeah.
I guess that's just like the severity of it, or if it's part of like, say, a RICO thing, maybe.
Yeah.
Is that usually what it is? Is it's part of a what's making the difference to where it's federal, aside from like crossing state lines or, you know, doing stuff with money?
Well, you're right about the RICO stuff, but also like anytime you cross state lines or commit a crime that crosses state lines, becomes federal, or you use an electronic device, another state or something, it becomes federal. You know, there's so many little details that can make a case, a crime federal. You know what I mean? But those are the main ones, I would say. You know?
Yeah. Like that dude that just got picked up for having a brothel over here right in Elizabeth City, like literally right in the middle of town, at his house. The case that's going on with that is that they think that it would have just been like, you know, being arrested for like solicitation and like promoting prostitution and this, that.
Basically being a pimp.
Yeah, but he had chicks that were from other states there, and they had supposedly went to other states too, so he's probably getting federal sex trafficking charges.
Yeah, that sounds most likely the case.
Yeah.
Did you guys know, aside from guys just telling you, did you kind of know what everyone was in for? Like, in other words, I think you know where I'm going with this. Did you know if somebody was a chomo? Did you know if somebody was a sex offender and things like that?
Well, now
federal
not, because like
traffic.
First of all, like you hear from other inmates or convicts what that guy is in for. So usually someone will tell you, but you know, if you have your own suspicions, you don't want to ask the guy in question, and you probably shouldn't ask anybody else either, unless you're like in tight with that person already, because it's bad etiquette to ask what somebody else is in for.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, so what you do if you want to know is you write a letter to your people on the outside, have them Google the guy,
right,
and then send you a letter telling you what he did. You know, so you'll always find out. You know, so there's no point if somebody demands your paperwork, because there's guys that can do that because no one's going to mess with them for whatever reason. If that guy demands your paperwork and you are some type of pedophile, you're in big trouble now, because he's going to find out anyway.
Either way, right?
You know what I mean?
So you will have guys doing like paperwork checks and stuff in like extreme situations. But that's another thing that dude talks about, is he's like, yeah, you know, and his wasn't his was probably around the time of Adams, maybe a little before, that he's like, yeah, as soon as you step in, it's like they're looking at you got to show them your jacket or whatever. You got to show them your paperwork. And I'm just like, I don't know, man. I got a lot of friends in prison, a lot of friends that have been to prison. I've never heard that. Like you said, people know, But it's not like, okay, here, sir, here's my paperwork, you know.
Right, or they find out.
I mean, and usually, you know, if they're asking, they already suspect something. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's not just something that happens routinely. Like I never asked
Yeah.
my paperwork. Nobody asked for it, you know. Now, when I took the RDAP class, you have to basically be an open book to get rehabilitated.
Hmm.
We had to like, you know, tell everyone in the class, you know, about our lives, our crimes, our families, you know, all that stuff, and our, you know, our cases, everything. So in that treatment program, you know, everyone's coming clean already anyway. But you know, out in the general population where people don't take that class, that's where that stuff pops up sometimes, like people demanding, you know, your paperwork, or you know, people asking about your paperwork or something like that. But it's not like an automatic thing. Like never happened to me.
Didn't think so.
It's another one of those myths, you know.
It was my God's honest that I was all about a non-violent approach, but it seems truth is a non-topic.